Welcome to Great Aspirations, Wealthspire Advisors podcast series on life, wellness, and financial advice. Each episode shares the experiences of extraordinary people whose stories inspire others to think big, find balance, and explore the possibilities of achieving health, wealth, and happiness. And now, here's your host, the CEO of Wealthspire Advisors, Michael LaMena.
Welcome to episode 3 of the third season of Wealthspire Advisors podcast, Great Aspirations. In season 3, we're excited to be highlighting the amazing personal stories and journeys of individuals we've been fortunate to intersect with, partner with, and learn from. While we are a wealth management firm that every day is engaged in deep financial planning work with our trusted clients, the conversations we're having in season 3 are about so much more than money. The goal of wealth management and financial planning is not to reach a number. It's about empowering people to live their best life. In each episode of season 3, we hope to shine a light on real human stories that give insight into what it means to live a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. In short, we hope to highlight tangible examples of life amplified. The title for the third episode of season 3 is The Highest Peak, a band of brothers' pursuit of fellowship, fundraising, and fun. I could not be more excited to have 3 amazing guests today on the podcast, and I think this is the largest number of people we've had on an episode. I'm honored to have as my guest Alden Mills, Bush and Chip Pyfer. And I'll give a brief background on each of them, and then we'll jump into what I know is going to be an amazing conversation. First of all, Alden Mills is a renowned motivational speaker, nationally ranked rowing champion, a 3-time Navy SEAL platoon commander, not enough to be a Navy SEAL, but a commander with the Navy SEALs, CEO of one of the fastest growing companies in America, and author of multiple books, Be Unstoppable, Unstoppable Teams, and Unstoppable Mindset. Bush is a partner and COO at Greywolf Capital Management in San Francisco. He's also on the board of directors of Raphael House in San Francisco, whose mission is to help low-income families and families experiencing homelessness achieve stable housing and financial independence. Last but certainly not least, Chip Pyfer. Chip is a managing director and advisor for Wealthspire, based in our Bay Area offices. He's a member of the firm's investment committee, providing leadership and input to the investment team. In addition to his multiple credentials and deep experience as a financial planner, Chip also has a JD from Willamette University College of Law. And as we were prepping for this, reminded me of his enthusiasm for the Oregon Ducks and their recent win over Ohio State.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I couldn't be more excited to have you here today. Each of you has accomplished amazing things as individuals, but I think the story today is really about a common thread that brings you all together. So why don't we start there? Chip, Alden, um, beyond just your individual success, give me a little bit insight into the organization, how you've met, how you guys have come together around something of shared purpose for many years.
Yeah, sure. The story really started when we all met in the fall of 2000. I had just left the Navy, moved out to San Francisco, knew no one. Brett had come from Massachusetts. He had been in San Francisco a while before us, and Chip had come from the Pacific Northwest. And we joined this group called the Guardsmen, which is unique to the Bay Area. It's been around now for over 75 years, and its focus is on raising money to send at-risk Bay Area youth to camp and to school. And the unique part of the Guardsmen is that it's a set number, 150 young men between the ages of 30 and 40. Some can go a little earlier, but by the time you're 40, you're out. And we became so involved with the Guardsmen, and it's a complete volunteer organization, raise a couple $1,000,000 a year to deal with some really important topics around Bay Area at-risk youth. And we send probably 2,500 kids to camp and 250 kids to school, get them in 3rd grade, follow them up through high school and in some cases college. And that's where we became close friends right from the beginning, volunteering together.
So that common shared sense of purpose around something philanthropic ultimately brought you guys together. But the friendship that has evolved through that, volunteer work with the guardsmen has really taken you guys on an incredible journey that has some of the same themes, right? That guardsman emphasis around getting kids out in nature, giving them access to camps. Talk to me about how your friendship has evolved over 20 plus years and where it's led you guys.
Hey Chip, you gotta tell me what we did to celebrate our 40th when
Yeah.
we all
So
Oh, kick it off.
the backstory there is that we were all new dads, or most of us were new dads, and I was approaching my 40th birthday, and I reached out to these guys saying, "Hey, let's do something special. We've been working on our kids, our families, so for all these years, these last few years in the Guardsmen. Let's go do something fun. Let's do something that I had drifted away from in the previous 10 years as I was getting married, having some young kids. Let's go climb a mountain." And none of us had done that together. Some of us had done some mountaineering before, but not as a group. So I threw it out there. Let's do the biggest mountain in the lower 48.
So what was the reaction to that? You throw out a goal like that to some friends. What was the reaction?
Well, my memory, and you guys might have slightly different memories, but we were with another mutual friend of ours. I think it's just me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Tom Power, and we were at a Giants game. And I said, let's do Whitney. And Tom Power's like, yeah, of course. Yes. Let's he was similarly situated, young kids, working his tail off. And it's like, no brainer. Let's do this. Let's go. We don't know what we're doing, but let's go do it. And so we set out in 2009, I think, uh,
2009.
to to climb Mount Whitney in Southern California, which is the tallest mountain in the lower 48.
So how was that? Tell me more about that experience. You set a goal like that. You have some enthusiastic, guys jump on right out of the gate.
Yeah. So
What
let
was
me
it like?
start. I'll start with. So I had some. I grew up on mountain skiing my whole childhood, and into my 20s, did some lower elevation mountaineering in the Pacific Northwest, and including Mount Rainier, mostly with my wife. And then the kids kicked in, and I just drifted away. So I had a little bit of experience, I had a little bit of equipment, but let's be clear here. A lot of the guys had no previous experience.
Yeah,
Right.
let's be a little more clear on this, actually. It wasn't just we had no experience. I thought this was a walk over the weekend where we just do some switchbacks
Right.
and we'd bring a couple of six packs of beer in our backpack and look at the beautiful Sierra. It was not just we're going to climb Mount Whitney, but we're going to take the mountaineers route, which required a guide and crampons and ice axes and ice climbing. Okay, this is much different than was originally purported with, oh, we're at a baseball game and let's go climb a mountain.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it was much bigger adventure than any of us had planned for. And I think I'm the one who's most afraid of heights. And there were a few circumstances where I think I literally like told to take my crampons and stick them into the ice and start to put the axe above and climb up. And I was like shaking to death and could barely move.
I was
Oh,
right
and
behind, but I remember that.
yeah, and the guide even said at one point, pay attention, you slip, you die. And Brett goes, that wasn't on the website.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I appreciate Chip just kind of casually saying, "Oh, let's go climb a mountain." He upped the game fivefold more than what was mentally we were prepared for.
Well, I mean, Alden, I think one of the themes of your work has been this idea of feeling and being unstoppable, right?
Mm.
So, Chip throws out a bold, ambitious goal. You guys are all around 40. This isn't like let's go to a football game. It is like seriously like let's take on a challenge. Talk to me about that theme that's gone through a lot of your work and how that shows up when a team of friends like this embarks on a journey that was bold, ambitious, right?
Yeah, so there's two key themes there that I'll touch on. One, you mentioned the unstoppable. Yes, there's obviously a theme that I like to talk about, being unstoppable. And I also like to remind people that you have to have been stopped to then learn what it's like to be unstoppable. And oh, by the way, I nearly didn't get off that mountain because I did 0 training, came down, bonked. These guys had to carry my gear. I mean, it was not a good showing for good old Navy SEAL Mr. Mills on that.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't go do that mountain because, oh, I want to write about it and go on the speaking circuit and say, hey, look, we did this. I actually had a real hole in my soul from coming out of SEAL team with such a strong male camaraderie environment. And I show up, I joined the Guardsmen, which was starting to fill that hole. And then by the time we left and you're kicked out at 40, I'm in dire need for more kind of fraternal bonding with guys. And when Chip came up with this concept, I was like, this is perfect. We can go do what I thought would be a little grind, not a lot grind. And we're going to bond sleeping in tents on rocks and, go swim in icy lakes up there. And it was really about just being together. That's what I was after. I could have really cared less if we had gotten to the summit or not. It was so much more about being together on a journey, doing something none of us had done before.
Look, that really resonates. And we think about all of you are successful in your business lives, in your family lives, but there is that desire of how can I continue to have experiences that give me fulfillment. And Chip, I heard you say early on in your life you had been exposed to mountains, but then drifted away from it. So there's that spark of something of interest that, Alden, you indicated that desire for, fraternal bonding, right? You had it in, previous stages and maybe felt like, okay, I'm leaving the Guardsmen, I'm not going to have it. Brett, talk to me about some of your motivation as you guys think about doing something that, that bold and ambitious.
Yeah, I think in large part it was a continuation of some of what we'd had at the Guardsmen with some of the camaraderie and the friendships. For me personally, I had some physical challenges I was starting to overcome at the time, and having these goals where you had something dedicated, a goal you're working towards throughout the year. These started to become annual events. So we moved on from Whitney, and we each year seemed to add a new peak, and so you always had this new challenge coming up. So for me, it was very much like something to stay focused on, the ability to stay together with my friends and have this big camaraderie where we continue to keep to develop our relationships together, and to stay physically fit and have this mental challenge that kind of stays with you throughout the year that you have to continue to maintain.
And Brett, I mean, I know you guys started, it sounds like, with Whitney. What are some of the other peaks that you guys have tackled together as a team?
Yeah, so this kicked off kind of an annual event. So it was kind of the core four of us who kicked it off with Whitney,
I
and then
love that, the core four.
had, we kind of would have other friends and guardsmen, others join us. So we moved on quickly. We did Mount Shasta, we did Mount Hood, we did the Grand Tetons. We eventually moved on to Rainier. I think we did Rainier twice, as we had to do. We did once with a big group, and once we had to go do crevasse training before we went on Denali. So it just kept becoming this annual camaraderie of keeping the group together, having a nice big challenge that we set for ourselves. Gives you a chance to set some goals and achieve those goals, hopefully, or not, and deal with your failures. And yeah, it continues, and it continues to this day. So it's been a great experience since Chip really kicked this off for us.
That's great. I love the spark of an idea blossoming into something that now, has been out there for a decade and more, and has brought people together. You guys have also woven into this experience of camaraderie, physical challenge, personal bonding. You've also woven in a philanthropic element. Could one of you talk to me a little bit about how you've merged that in?
Well, the catalyst was this group, the Guardsmen. So the spirit of that is, as Alden shared, was raising money annually for at-risk kids in the Bay Area. It seemed like a natural fit where all of us had served on the board of the Guardsmen. Our network within the Guardsmen's meaningful, and it was fairly easy to come up with this idea of like, let's bring attention to what we're doing together as brothers within the guardsmen to the larger group and invite them to participate in raising some money for this organization. And I think you'll have to help me, you guys. What was the first mountain we started with from that?
Denali.
Was it Denali?
Yeah, Denali.
And so we put it out to our network, and everyone's very generous and within the guardsmen and very interested. So it just kind of quickly caught, um, and we didn't have huge aspirations, right? Financially, we were just looking for some participation, $5, $10, $100, whatever people could afford, and it worked.
It was
And
a
it
nice
brought
way to give back to the group that we all developed our relationships in as well, right? That was a
right.
large part
That's
of that.
true, Brett.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I love that symmetry, right? Like you all join an organization, it becomes meaningful, but as you indicated, it's got a duration. You guys want to perpetuate that relationship, but even in thinking about weaving in the philanthropic element, raising money, for an organization that kind of brought you together. I love the symmetry and that it became part of this ongoing continuation of your friendship and your achievement in mountaineering. That's really neat. I'm
Mike,
sure. Yeah,
I'll
go
tell
ahead.
you, I just add to that the theme in the Guardsmen is these three core values of fellowship, fundraising, and fun. And it inadvertently turned into that for us. We were all 50 when we were climbing Denali, and it was like, oh, we're going to celebrate our 50th and we're going to do this fundraiser. And we all huddled around a table just a couple of days before we went on the glacier, got this out, and then you start to look back at everything we would do together. It was always about the fellowship, the fun, and then the fundraising just came with it. Right. Every one of these climbs we'd call cultural awareness after the climb. It got us something to look forward to that gave us that fun afterwards, because there was sometimes not a lot of fun on those mountains. And when you had those three together, it really makes for memorable moments in your life.
Yeah, and I mean, I
Mm.
love if Brett or Chip, you want to elaborate on that. But when we think about lives of purpose, meaning, fulfillment, those three things: fun, fellowship, fundraising. They resonate with me as things that are part of a life well lived. So maybe if either of you guys want to
Yeah, I'll,
elaborate on.
I'll I'll start by introducing another word, suffering.
Yeah,
Suffering.
sure.
We are this group here. There's a strange attraction to suffering, and pushing ourselves through what we think might be our limits. And I know I can speak for the three of us. We definitely suffered and pushed through some amazing limits on Denali and Aconcagua. We didn't speak to Aconcagua yet. That was a mountain that we climbed in 2022. We suffered, and it was just a suffer fest that we shared together, which just furthers the depth of our friendship, uh, to go through that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add that, and Alden hit on this, the cultural appreciation and awareness when you're going to these places and the before and after and meeting people on the mountain and, getting to spend time in the towns afterwards, it really adds to the overall experience and global awareness in some cases. We eventually branched out outside of the United States. But, when we climbed Denali, I think there must have been 20 other nationalities going up and down the mountain with us. So
Mhm.
it's a really interesting experience to see and experience, you know, other cultures and the world and other folks who are tackling some of the same goals.
I love that something that on the surface could appear as such an individual pursuit. I want to go climb this mountain, right? Actually, in the way that each of you describe it's about the friendship and the camaraderie and the teamwork. It's about, Brett, as you just described, your place in a bigger world and putting that in cultural context. Chip, it's about that suffering individually and collectively, but the ability to kind of see that through and achieve more than maybe you anticipated you could individually. So I love that in a pursuit that can appear so individually oriented, all of you are talking about the experience in such different terms. And maybe Alden, I mean, I think a big part of your professional work has been, how do I take individuals and teams and coach them through that process of exceeding their own expectations, right? Being unstoppable. Talk
Right.
to me about how that shows up in some of the experiences that you all had together in that suffering that, Chip described.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, I'll give you one. We're on Denali. There's a snowstorm, and it sucked. The snow's almost up to our waist, and our guide is convinced that we have to walk through this portion of the storm. We got to get in front of this. We got to get to this next base camp. If we can get there, there'll be a window where we can get to the summit. Denali is very tricky when it comes to weather. A lot of people just don't summit because of the weather. It has nothing to do with their skill. And for me personally, I remember being what I would consider the Clydesdale of the group. That would be over 225. And by the way, you're talking to the two billy goats over there.
Nice.
They're at the front. I'm in the rear. Let's
Yep.
be clear about that. There's no ego here for me on this. And I remember looking at my watch and I was like, okay, I'm going to do 55 1-minute workouts. And I'm going to count steps because I couldn't look at my watch all the time. And I would time how many steps per minute I could take. And on a typical workout up of the mountain, it was about 65 steps a minute. In this particular day, it was 19 steps per minute.
Wow.
And I just remember going, okay, I'm going to just take this 1 minute at a time. And there's not a lot of talking during the 55 minutes. You're just breathing. And we would all huddle up, Chip, Brett, and myself, and it was totally raw, unfiltered emotion. And we check in and be like, how we doing? Chip may go, oh, that was the hardest last 55 minutes. And when he would say that, I'd be like, oh, thank God, because he is so good at and so fast at climbing that if he was hurting, then it was okay that I was hurting. And Brett would say something like, hey guys, I'm in it to be with you. If we want to turn around, I'm okay with that, which all of us would think the same thing. And when you have that level without judgment and such honest candor between everybody, it actually made you want to keep going on. Or when you'd be in the tent and you just, it's minus 25 and sometimes it'd get down to minus 35, 40 and the ice would fill up inside the tent, inside from your condensation. You'd be like, I don't know if I've ever been this cold before. And then you'd look at each other and you just smile. And in that kind of a moment, and you'd have that day after day after day, we would say to ourselves, oh, you know what? For the amount of money we spend here, we could go rent a boat in the BVI's for a week and, drink every day at every new different bar, but you wouldn't have the transformation that you'd have after we did these. We came off each of these mountains, Mike. We were different. We were better than we were when we showed up. And
Look,
better might just mean confidence, the confidence and we were definitely closer.
well, there's so much in what you just described. I mean, it's being in it together, right? That struggle together, those points of, I don't know that I want to carry on, but somebody else is supporting me, and other times you're supporting somebody else, and that growth. Again, you guys are paying money not to sit on a beach and have a drink, but to put yourselves through something individually and together through which you're growing. Talk to me about how that experience relays to other aspects of your life, whether it's work. Each of you are very accomplished, other things you navigate personally. How is this experience you guys have had over years together, in personal and collective growth, like translated into other areas of your lives?
I've got a quick answer for that.
Yeah,
I'm not in it alone.
there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Community, like it relates to my relationship with my children and my wife, my best friends. Like I've got people who are going through their journeys and we've got each other's backs. We're not in it alone.
I'd agree with that. I'm much more aware of my community and giving back to the community and participating more in the community, you realize how much you need others to really support you, and you need to support others to get through whatever your goal is in life.
I love it.
And
Alden, anything?
I'll add one piece because those guys just hit on two very important pieces. But the other piece would be being present. And I'll give you the example. On Denali, there are a lot of fault summits. You will we hiked for 15 days and we didn't get to see the summit until 45 minutes before we make this last turn. And I remember thinking to myself, if I had said, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Where's the summit? Where's the summit?" You would have freaked out. And you could see people that were freaking out on the mountain. They're like, "Oh, forget it. I'm out of here." If you just stayed in the present, enjoyed the beauty of the moment with your friends, the fellowship of what you're going through, and the suffering, I bring that present back a lot. And I give that as examples all the time. Focus
Yeah,
on
I
the
think in a world where people are so focused on the destination, the goal, the
yeah.
objective, like that message of being in the moment and present and enjoying the journey, that isn't always going to be roses, right? It is sometimes going to be difficult, but if you embrace the fact that you're not alone, you're surrounded by people that can partner with you, support you, that you can support. I mean, I feel like when we talk about a life of purpose, meaning, fulfillment, a life amplified. I mean, isn't that the human condition where we're talking about we're on this planet together, and how do we support each other? And it has to be about something more than us just individually.
Yeah, Mike, I would argue with you. We were not looking for the roses.
Right,
Because Chip brought up, we paid to have amazing amounts of suffering.
right.
We wanted safe suffering, and some of it was questionably safe, but the great bonding, the great memories, the great transformations, they came from the suffer. They
Right,
came from that struggle of, "Hey, I'm not sure we can do this," or "I'm not sure I can do this." And then you'd look over at the other one and they'd give you a wink because you couldn't breathe, but you just get a little smirk or something and be like, "Okay, he's still going. I'm going to still go. Let's keep going." And each of us pushed each other to do something that I think individually we weren't sure we could do alone.
that resonates with me. I mean, I think the path of least resistance. Like when you get outside your comfort zone, when you do endure pain, suffering, there's a lot of growth that comes with it. What I love about the way you guys have navigated is you've all done that individually, but also with the sense of doing it as a team, which I think is really powerful. When all of you think about, you've had individual accomplishments, you're all very successful in business, you've achieved, status, you're engaged in your communities philanthropically, you have this friendship, deep friendship that you've been able to cultivate over time. I think Chip, you may have at one point mentioned the word legacy. When you guys think about, beyond just yourself, when you think about your community, your impact on your community, your families, how do you think about that word legacy? It comes up a lot in our business because we're fortunate to work with, families that, in many instances have generated significant wealth, and they think about, legacy, not just in financial terms, but how do you translate values across generations, and how do you have an impact that lasts beyond your own life? How do each of you think about it? Because you clearly have broad views on the world, right?
Let's start with family.
Yeah.
When you said legacy and teed up that word, my immediate thought was my immediate family. That's where it starts first. Is setting an example. I have three children who are now 22 and 20 and 17, and I want to leave a legacy that inspires them.
I love it. I know how much your family means to you. Alden, what about you? I mean, I know a lot of the work you're doing. Like you've been successful as a business entrepreneur, but now you spend a lot of time evangelizing this idea of being unstoppable and that mindset, and what it means. Is that part of your legacy and being able to kind of coach and guide people to that mindset so that it can be like ripples on a pond that impact more and more people?
Oh, oh. How did you know I used that metaphor?
I didn't, but
Exactly correct.
all right,
Yeah.
great.
He Chip answered it. When I sit down to write a book, I always think first and foremost about my 4 boys. Is this in some way going to help them be unstoppable at going after their dreams, their goals, what kind of impact they can make in life? If I think of that as the inner ring of the ripple on the pond, so to speak, and I'm the
Sure.
pebble that disturbs the surface, the next levels out are just expanding that from my kids to my community to other organizations. As I think now about where I get the greatest joy, where that intersection between passion and purpose are, it's really about giving the best of myself to others. And I think about that and constantly try and hone, okay, if I can help just one person be a little bit more courageous at going after something that's important to them, well, that ripple effect can be contagious to the next person and perhaps a larger group. But it always starts with the family, that initial ripple before going out any further.
I love that. Brett, how about you?
Yeah, as I think about, specific to our climbing adventures as a legacy, I think about it encompasses so much of what I value. One is the obvious, you're setting a goal. You have to take all these different steps to achieve your goal. There's a very good chance you're going to fail at that goal and you have to deal with that. So I think it's a good anecdote for setting any goal in life. And leaving that for my son and family and others to see, I think is useful. In fact, my son, when he was seeing me doing this, asked if he could do it with me at one point, and
Oh, wow.
actually, I researched it and ended up was able to take him to climb Kilimanjaro when he was 9 years old, and that was kind of a
Remarkable.
Oh,
example
that
of the
had to be an
legacy it has.
amazing experience.
That was probably one of the top two experiences of my life was with him. So it was really amazing. And I think the community aspect of this. I mean, he sees me doing it with my friends, with Chip, with Alden. We have this whole team that gets together, and it's really become a part of my family. Both these guys and their families become part of my family as part of this. So it really is part of the community as well.
I love that. What's on the horizon? You guys have done some amazing peaks. Anything on the horizon that you want to talk about or share, or is that
Just a
uh,
little mountain for those two,
Little
just a
little hill.
little itty bitty one.
Chip and I we're going to try Mount Everest, I think, and not going to think we're going to try
Not,
Mount
I
Everest.
think.
Well, I mean, I've definitely learned that each of you is humble, but amazing what you've accomplished, and excited to hopefully witness that next stage of the climbing efforts. I guess one last question, then we'll wrap up. Each of you have had amazing journeys, and it's clear that all of you reflect and are thinking about like learning as life as a lifelong learning experience. Um, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, having had the experiences that you've had, what might that be?
I'll
You guys are
start.
so polite. You all want to
I'll
look at
start.
each
Yeah,
other
I
and
know.
say,
I'm
"Who
looking to
wants to
Chip.
start?"
This is kind of deep here, but I
Yeah.
learned a lot about vulnerability
Yep.
in this journey through my 40s and into my 50s. That was a word that I thought was taboo when I was young, to be vulnerable and to, when needed, ask for help. So that would be one lesson. And the second, which Alden spoke to earlier, which was really just be present in the moment. Like the time ticks by, and if you're not present,
Yeah.
you're missing out. So those
Ch-
are
Chip,
two.
Chip, both of those resonate tremendously. The vulnerability issue. It's interesting to me that here you guys are. You're part of an all male philanthropic organization that leads to a group of men climbing mountains. Like from the outside, people will probably look at that and say, "This is all about macho men, kind of out there." And the word you use is vulnerability, right? And I heard it the way you guys described that suffering and the uncertainty. Like it really resonates with me that through this fraternal bond you guys have established, you really leaned into vulnerability and being present. That's great. Thank you, Chip. Alden or Brett?
I would echo both those things Chip said, but on top of that, I would tell my younger self that the main person preventing you from achieving goals and things you want in life is you.
That's
Tough to
outstanding.
follow these two. What do you got, Alden?
Yeah,
You should have
would-
gone first.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I jumped in for a
dude,
reason.
That's a book right there.
You said you said you bring up the back of the line. The Billy Goats went.
Yeah.
Now you're
Yeah.
up next. What do you
Yeah,
what do you got, Clydesdale?
trudging through here. 2 components. 1, do not worry. Don't worry. It does nothing good for you. Don't worry. And 2, just be you. Be more you. Give more of your authentic self every day.
That's great.
Good.
Well, look, I really appreciate you guys sharing a little bit of glimpse into, one, your friendship, 2, the work you've done together. Again, I've said it a couple of times, but each of you are so accomplished professionally. This conversation has been about some of the things you do outside of that. And I love, your willingness to be vulnerable and share some insights into your friendship, the camaraderie, the suffering, the things that you've purposely chosen to do to grow individually and as, a group of friends. So when I think about a life well lived, a life of purpose, fulfillment, and meaning, you guys are modeling it in your day-to-day actions, and you're also, thinking about it through the lens of how you think about legacy. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you guys. Thanks for sharing a little bit of insights on your own human journey.
Mike, thank you. And thanks for bringing the hard questions. I really enjoyed that. It's our own little mountain climb together today.
Yeah, no kidding.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Mike.
Thank you. And Alden,
Thank
Brett,
you.
thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Great Aspirations, presented by Wealthspire Advisors, a registered investment advisor and subsidiary company of NFP Corp. If you have feedback, including suggestions for future topics and guests, contact us at clientrelations@wealthspire.com.